Okay, so this is going to be a video on linked list 234, palindrome linked list. So in case you don't know, a palindrome is just a list that is the same frontwards and backwards. So if I was to reverse this linked list, it would look like this. However, if I was to reverse this linked list, it would go from 1 to 2 to 2 to 1. So I would return false. So you're basically just checking, is this a palindrome or not? And we're going to iterate through the linked list, but we can use additional like data structures to store the data. So in this solution, I'm going to use an array. So first, let's just traverse the linked list. So I'm going to say while head equals head.next. And as you recall, linked lists are set up in this way where they each have a next value which points to the additional or the next node, and then they have a val which is their current value. So 1's current value obviously would be 1. Its next property would point to this node 2, and 2's value would be 2. So that's basically the logic behind that. So we're just traversing the list by using this head equals head.next. And we're checking if there is a head that's actually truthy and exists. So now if I console.log head.val and run this code, you can see it's just outputting the list. So that looks good. So what I want to do now, as I mentioned before, is I want to store it in a data structure like an array, because we're allowed to do that. So that's going to make it a lot easier to see if this is an actual legitimate palindrome. So let's make an array. I'll just call it result. And each time I iterate through a list node, I'm just going to put it in the array. So I'll say result.push head.val. And then I'll console.log what the result is. So I run this code, and now we have our linked list basically inside an array, which is going to be a lot easier to see the values. So what I can do now is I can actually just loop over the array. Just like this. I'm just going to log everything out here. Oh, gotta make sure this is actually makes sense in increments. Okay, so here you see our values, and we're going through the list. Okay, so the best way to probably do this is to compare the first value with the next value, then the next value with this value. So we can kind of use a 2 pointers approach here. So I'm going to actually, instead of using I as my variable name, I'll call it start. And that is going to start at the beginning of whatever this list is. So let's say start. And then I'm going to make another variable called end, which is going to be result.length minus 1. So that's going to be this end value. It's going to start here, and then it's going to decrement. So I'm going to decrement it. I'll say end minus minus. So now if I was to console.log start and end here, you can see the start index is right here, and it's incrementing, and then the end index starts at the last value, the index of the last value, and then it's decrementing. So this is good because we're going to compare these 2 pointers to each other, and if they are not equal, if those values are not equal within these indices, then we know we need to return false. The important thing to remember, though, is we don't need to actually traverse the entire array for each pointer. Like, for instance, the end variable only needs to check these 2 values. It doesn't need to check these 2 over here, because start is going to check those. So really what I want to do is not iterate over the entire linked list, but only half of it. So let's come over here for our condition to see how many iterations we want to do. Instead of saying result.length, let's say result.length divided by 2, and then we are going to floor it so it gives us an actual value that's not like a floating integer. So now if I return this, or if I run this rather, You can see I'm doing the same thing of getting those indices and comparing those indices, but now we're only doing 2 iterations because that's half the length of the list. So from here, let's actually do the comparison. So we'll say if start at I, or start result at start. So I'm so used to using the variable name I, my bad. Equals or doesn't equal result at end, return false. Otherwise, if none of this comes back as false, we know we have a valid palindrome and we can return true. So let's run this. And there you have it. We have a valid answer here. And we just created a new array, stored those values in the new array with our linked list. We only checked the beginning and the end. We didn't check the entire array because that would be redundant. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.